Our country, the Philippines, is located in a geographically active area called the Pacific Ring of Fire. In this session, we will look at its implication in our country. Specifically, by the end of the lesson, you should be able to explain the implication of fault in the occurrence of an earthquake, discuss the formation of faults in the Earth's crust, and differentiate the types of fault. One of the early warnings where earthquakes frequently occur is when there is a presence of fault nearby. Faults by definition is a fracture in the Earth's crust. But the question is, how do these cracks form and appear? Our planet, based on your recent study, is made up of layers. The crust, being the topmost layer, happens to be the most affected in terms of movement occurring underneath. This movement is what we call plate movement. Plate movement causes rocks to be compressed or stretched, which in turn causes earthquakes and the formation of faults. Dahil sa mga proseso sa iba't ibang layer ng ating planeta, ay lumilikha ito ng plate movement sa mga bato na nasa ibabaw na siyang sanhi ng pagkakaroon ng mga pwersang pag-ipit o pagbinat ng lupa sa ibabaw o sa layer na crust. When we see cracks in the ground, does it immediately mean that the area is prone to earthquakes? No, not necessarily. Fault starts with fractures in the Earth's crust. Fractures vary from small cracks to large ones. However, if more plate movement occur, these fractures become more visible, which will consider it to be called a fault. If a fault already covered a large area, it would signify that the area is prone to earthquake. An area located near a fault is called the fault zone. Maraming ibang dahilan bukod sa lindol kung bakit nagkakaroon ng bitak o butas ang lupa. Ngunit kung ito ay karaniwan ng nakakaranas ng lindol at nakikita na rin sa mga struktura na nakapaligid rito, ay maaring ang lugar na ito ay nasa fault zone. There are many ways as to how the crust responds to the plate movements. The crust can be composed of many materials, example, clay or rocks. Depending on these materials, the crust responds dramatically different from one another. If an area is composed of land that is mostly clay, when stretched, the land will become longer or thinner. On the other hand, rocks will respond a lot longer since rock is brittle. As it gets stretched and thin, there is a higher chance that it would form a crack compared to crust made out of clay. When these two get compressed, they would both become shorter and thicker. But a crust made mostly of clay would form folds than plain flat surface. Dahil sa mga pagkakaiba ng komposisyon ng lupa, ay magkakaiba din ang mga nalilikha nitong struktura. Dahil mas malambot at flexible ang clay, ay madaling nababago ang forma nito. Habang ang mas matigas na bato ay mahirap baguhin at minsan ay nagkakaroon pa ng pagbitak sa struktura nito. There are many ways the plates move. When plates move away from one another, a normal fault would be formed, or in other term, a deep slip fault. Deep slip fault is characterized by a sinking land structure. The second one is called a reverse fault. It occurs when a land structure would appear to be raised higher than its original position. The fold-up structure is a result of two plates squeezing against each other. When a fault is formed by a shear movement, the plates would form a strike-slip fault. Ang normal fault ay nabubuo dahil sa diverging movement o paglayo ng mga lupa. Ang reverse fault ay nabubuo naman ng paglapit ng mga lupa o convergent movement. Samantala, ang mistulang magkasalungat na galaw ng lupa o shear naman ay nakalilikha ng strike-slip fault. Faults can also be classified as active or inactive. Active faults are faults that have recently generated an earthquake or is a fault that have generated an earthquake within 10,000 years. Active faults can still continue to generate more earthquakes. Inactive faults, on the other hand, do not show any signs of ever generating an earthquake as its recent generated quake occurred not earlier than 10,000 years. However, inactive faults may still become active in the future. Dahil ang lindol ay isang trahedya na walang pasubali, maaari nating gawing batayan ang klasipikasyong nabanggit kung gaano kalapit ang ating tahanan o ang isang struktura sa lindol. PHIVOLCS, or the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, lead the study of active faults in the country. The most popular fault systems in the country are as follows. The Philippine Fault Zone is the longest fault line in the country, which cuts almost the entire Philippine archipelago. That's 1,200 kilometers long fault line with many faults connected to it. This fault moves at a rate of 2 to 3 centimeters a year. The Valley Fault System is located on the eastern part of Manila, Lubang Fault in Batangas and Mindoro, and the Central Mindoro Fault seen on topographic maps. Digdig Fault is also found near Nueva Vizcaya. Natural disasters have always been one of the major causes of death to mankind. Earthquake is one of natural disasters that doesn't come with warning. It cannot be predicted, that's why we have to be all the more equipped and be prepared when it comes. In the next video, we will look at more about earthquake. That's all the time we have for faults in a flash. Thanks for watching and see you again in the next one.